to start in the next minute or so. So just to allow a few more folks to join. And as they are joining, hey, Ira, hey, folks, hey, Hen. Awesome.
Yeah,
Udy,
so nice to see everyone. Yeah, brilliant.
I think I'm going to pass it to you. So we are 5 minutes past. So let's try to be respectful of the people that joined on time. And feel free to kick us off.
So hi everyone. We're the human versus machine. That's the ultimate fight. I will start in a second. Nathan, you want to say a few words from your end? No, you're muted now.
Yeah, for sure. So literally 30 seconds about Genway. First of all, thank you all for joining us today, whether it's early morning hours. I know for some of you it's 6 a.m., whether it's late evening hours, appreciate you being here. Two sentences about Genway. Genway is an AI native research platform, meaning we are powering our research by conversational AI agents. The platform supports multiple methods for research, such as AI moderated interviews, AI moderated usability studies, as well as AI moderated surveys, which over the last 6 to 12 months became industry standard. That's all you're going to hear from me today. The focus of today's session is actually Udy and the study that he conducted roughly 6 months or so. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Udy so that he can talk about his study. And if you're keen to explore Genway or to follow up, feel free to reach out and we can talk more about Genway.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nathan. So super excited to be here. I can definitely see a few friendly faces on the list and a lot of new faces from people from Kansas and London and the Netherlands. It's all brilliant. So let me just start with just a few words about myself. And to be honest, I'm super excited to be here. And the reason is that, even after 25 years of doing this, I can still open a new chapter in my, professional life, which is the AI chapter within UX. And to be honest, it's quite refreshing that I can still start something new. And I think it's true for all of us. And it's interesting because I started my career about 25 years ago. I started as a consultant in London and doing research in a lot of different domains. It was web and mobile and the ticket machine and all that kind of stuff. And then I joined eBay, again, a lot of research and design in a very consumer clothing area. And then when I came back to Israel, it was about 2009, and I established a few product design departments in companies such as Sysons and WalkMe and Zynga. And last year, I actually became independent, which allowed me to do a lot of different things and try new things. And that's how I got to Nathan and Genway. And let me tell you the story about it. So what happened is that I kind of was scrolling through Facebook, and at some point I heard like there's a name of company called Genway, and they said that they can actually conduct quality in-depth user interviews. And I was like, okay. I was like staring at the screen, and even before I went to check out the website, my first thought was that, okay, that's maybe cool, but maybe it's time to pack up my stuff and go, because if that's what they're doing and that's kind of the holy grail of research, that put me in a difficult position as a new business owner in the domain of UX. But obviously, the first thing I went to do is I went to check it. So I went to be interviewed. I wanted to see how it feels to be interviewed by the machine. And let's start with, I'll let you hear how that sounds, and let's start with that.
To start, could you tell me how many people are in your household?
Yeah, the four of us.
Got it. 4 people in the household. Are you the primary person who does the grocery shopping, especially online?
Yes, it's me and my wife.
Thanks for that. And when it comes to online grocery shopping, would you say you do it more regularly or just occasionally?
Pretty much regularly.
Got it. So, between you and your wife, do you both share the responsibility of selecting items, or do you mostly handle that part yourself?
So as you can see, it's
Sir, could you tell me how many people are in your household?
it's a pretty fluent discussion. And at that point, when I saw that, I was pretty fired up. And again, from one point, it's like a hugely interesting thing from a professional level. On the other hand, it felt like, hey, hi Udy, come and meet your replacement. They're already here. So I had to check about this. So I reached out to Nathan. He was quite surprised. And I said, you know what? I really would like to test this thing. And let's do a research and we'll repeat it twice. First time, I'll do it kind of one-to-one, good old interviews. And the second time, we're going to conduct the same research, just with 100 people because we can, using the Genway tool, and just let's see how it works. And I was again kind of in that position at the time, but I did select a topic for the research, which is something I'm kind of known, which is the area of online grocery shopping. And what we decided to do is just, okay, let's assume like a supermarket is want to do what's the next big feature, what's the next AI feature, and they want to run a research. And the idea is that not just um, asking people what they like, but also gathering the context. So, for example, if someone have different dietary requirements, obviously they might be interested in things that are related to diet. But if someone hates cooking, it's very unlikely that they would like to have some cooking features. So that was the kind of the header of the research. And in terms of the objective, the idea is like evaluate demand for a variety of novel AI features, but based on their current user behavior and needs. So that was the research that we wanted to do. Now, to accomplish that, we decided on two sections of the research. If someone, Ashley, if you can mute. Yes, thank you very much. So the first part of the research is about the context. So these are questions like how many people live in your household? Do you shop for everyone or just for yourself? How frequently do you cook? Dietary restrictions, shopping online. So understanding the context of shopping online. So that's the first part. And the second part is actually going deeper into the kind of things that we would like to know about features like, are you interested in voice enabled or shared shopping list? Are you interested in anything around recipe to cart? So, getting a recipe from TikTok or Instagram or one of the cooking TV shows straight to your cart. Things like personalized recommendations or, any other idea that comes up. But again, they need to fit kind of the context that we're carrying on the first part. So as you can see, we're kind of a research within a research kind of thing, right? So we're doing the research about online shopping, but our interest is kind of coming from above, which is understanding and comparing manual research method versus the Genway AI research method. And to do that, we're going to go through 4 stages of doing the research. So recruitment section, setting up the questionnaires and whatever it is, executions of the interviews and analysis. How are we doing so far? Any questions so far? You can either use the webinar chat or use the questions area. Nathan, do we have anything?
No, so I think you're good so far. So just to maybe recap, it's a comparative study in which Udy is conducting research, and at the same time, you're using Genway to conduct a similar research.
Yeah. Cool. So let's start with the recruitment area. Now, in order to do that, we need to understand that this is not exactly apples to apples. So the recruitment for the 10 people that we're going to do that I did manually is, you know, the very manual process. You're contacting people, you need to set up the times. There's obviously time zone and time differences. There are people that are delaying the sessions and so on. So, and you need to involve Calendly or all these tools, and you're probably familiar with these things. On the AI research side, it's you need to get to 100 people, so you can't use the manual research. There's their own panel that Genway is using, and that's all happening automatically. Now, at the time, we did not have everything, but at the moment, Genway actually offers 3 ways of recruitment. One is that you can approach the panel, you know, ask screener questions and everything. Secondly, you can bring your own people. So if you have your own list of customers or clients that you would like to speak to, you can definitely use them. Or you can use any third party. So if you're using any other panel recruitment, you can provide them with a Genway research link, and that will work as well. Obviously, the emphasis when recruiting 100 people is a quantitative method. It runs quickly without your intervention. To give you some idea how that looks like, so for example, we decided to do 50 people from the UK, 50 people from the US. You can have screen, like when using Genway's panel, I was able to use a few questions, so just making sure that they're following certain criteria, which is buying online at least a few times a month, and for the primary online grocery shoppings in their household. And also, we did a bit of pilot, and in the first round, we got people that were kind of average and below in terms of income. So we wanted to correct that to have something. We added another level of having an updated income from middle and above. So we'll have so it's not going to be skewed towards the lower level, and we'll have a mix of answers. And so we've arranged for all that. And just to compare how these things, so I'm kind of using this slide every section just to be able to compare the manual, which is like the little green thing, and Genway, which is the purple G. So obviously, in terms of number of participants, mine is limited. I'm human after all. And when you approach with Genway, it's not only unlimited, it's also it goes to geos and languages. So essentially, as an English-speaking researcher, I can build the research in English. I can submit it to be done in German or in French or in other languages. And when I get the analytics and the responder, they again translated to English. So as an English-speaking researcher, I can actually submit research that goes around the world in many different languages, which is something that obviously I couldn't do on a manual level. The other level that it adds value is that if I would have another French researcher and German researcher, so on, nothing would be able to allow to have us all doing the research exactly in the same level and the same style, which in here can happen because the system will stay consistent between the languages. Moving on, recruitment type, as I said, we're doing the manual thing, and the automated system is much faster, obviously. And there's another aspect to be aware of, which is the validation. So if I speak to someone in real time, I can feel that, if they're maybe not from the target audience, or I feel that the answer doesn't sound very reliable. So I will feel that in real time. Be aware that when you're doing it automatically, it needs to be based on the screener, right? The interviewer cannot feel during the same time what happens. It will provide you with the full interview. So you need to test your screeners before, and we will get to how to do that. So to summarize this section, the automated recruitment is super effective and hassle-free. You just need to make sure that the screeners work okay, so you'll get the right population. Again, any questions about the recruitment area before I go forward?
Yes, quick question. I see Brian's also unmuted, so if we're on the same team, so you can ask if. Or okay, I guess I'll go ahead. My question is on the recruitment team, on the recruitment situation, can you list specific technologies and specific, I guess, areas of focus and kind of how, I guess, like how granular can you get in their technology understanding for the recruitment that you want to do, if that
Nathan,
makes
you
sense?
want to take that?
So I can say a few sentences and then maybe Udy, feel free to add to that. I think in terms of recruitment, we break it down into B2B and B2C, so consumer and B2B, which is business. From a consumer standpoint, you can get very granular, especially if you integrate screeners. From a B2B standpoint, it's more sophisticated and you won't be able to get to the same level of granularity as you would with GLG or TIGAS. That's kind of
Do
my
you want any mac and cheese?
Sorry, Ashley, can you repeat the question? Okay, sorry, I think, yeah, so hopefully, Brian, that answers your question, but Udy, would you like to maybe add from your experience?
Yeah.
I know we had some back and forth and you were trying the audience in order to get to the right audience that you were looking for.
Yeah. So I think it needs some trial and error, right? So if these are kind of basic incomes, things like that, you can probably use any panel. But if you have super specific ones, maybe you should get your own, a range for, set, either using a third party panel, which is their profession to find the right people. I'm sure you can get to any level of granularity, depends on, how complex it is for the specific research.
Now,
And
generally speaking, and that's maybe just a comment overall, when you conduct research, your best option is to actually recruit participants on your own from the general population rather than using a panel. In such way, you can actually get an unbiased sample of people rather than using a panel where people are actually incentivized to participate in interviews. But as it stands, using a panel is the only kind of scalable solution. And so that's just something to keep in mind.
And I see that Saravjit asked whether the system, the AI, rejects unsuitable participants. I think there's Nathan, there is some level of filter, right?
So just when Udy was conducting the study, we did not have the capability as of then. Now, based on the screeners, you can reject participants. And once you do the analysis, if someone does not fit your criteria, you can always remove them and basically analyze the data on a fresh sample rather than having that specific participant within the system.
Yeah. Do you have another question or shall we go on?
No, let's go forward to the next section, maybe.
Yeah, we'll still have some time for questions at the end. So if you have something to ask, feel free to keep it for later. So let's move into the setup area, setting up the research. And as I mentioned before, again, it's also slightly different between manual and automated. So if I will write my own session agenda, I will probably write literally the questions one by one. Even if I'm not going to follow it religiously, I'm going to still have a list of questions. The setup in using Genway AI is a bit different. It's a kind of a more high level. So you talk about your objective, about the things you're trying to get from the research, and that kind of a high level descriptions give the AI enough information to conduct the session. Very soon, they're going to launch a new feature as well, which will allow you to follow a constructed session. But that's coming up very soon. The research that I have done is, as I described, it's just giving it more at the high level than it runs. And again, I'll give you a quick look of how it looks. So on that screen, you're starting with the project overview and what we're trying to cover and what would be a successful outcome, all kind of these questions that you can also use the Genway GPT to help you defining the right things. So your setup is slightly different than what we're used to. Now, again, if I'm going to the comparison, so basic definition, who are the target audience, what are we trying to achieve, and all that are pretty similar between manual and Genway. In terms of the preparing the session, again, as I said, one is writing the question, one is giving it the overall direction until we have the structured sessions. But in terms of iteration, that's something very important to remember. So if I run my own sessions, sometimes, to be honest, sometimes I'm doing a pilot session, sometimes I just start with the first one. And if I find a question or two that less suitable, I will just keep them with the next interview. Here you must try the thing. So for example, what I tried, I gave the Genway AI all the information that I wanted and the goals and everything. And I went to test the session myself to be an interviewee. And the session started with the questions like, how would you describe your online grocery shopping experience? And for me as a researcher, it was a bit too wide for a first question. Definitely for people that are likely to sit down for the first time in front of this kind of in this kind of machine. So I felt the interview should start with kind of shorter, more closed questions. It's going to be easier to go into the session. So I made that change. I instructed the system to follow this path, and that one went well later on. So doing this kind of iteration doesn't take too long, but it's definitely a must when you run the session. So if I would like to summarize the setup section, so setup work is pretty similar in terms of the workload. You either this or that, but you do have to accept that you do not have full control as you have when you're running your own session, right? The thing will run for itself. But again, I'll show you how to test it and how to make sure that you're getting the right results. Moving on to the super interesting area, which is the actual execution. Nathan,
Just
yes.
1 second. Let's pause for a second and take a few questions over here. So I'm going to read them out for you so that you're able to answer them. So the first question that we got in the Q&A from Hen, she's asking, and I'm just going maybe to read it out. In many B2B contexts, especially when recruiters are customers, they often agree to meeting thanks to the CS or the sales teams pushing these meetings as product discussions or framed as interactions with the experienced team. Given that, how do you navigate the emotional and interpersonal coldness with the AI assistant interactions rather than a human interviewer?
So to be honest, I tested this on a consumer level, not on a B2B. But I'm helping a client now getting into this. And I would recommend first time, if you first time approaching your users, maybe the first time should be, using the CS manual, get some friendly, at least the head of the department, have a chat with them and explain how it's going to be. And only then moved into kind of the AI aspect of it. I would not do first time interview ever with internal user with the AI. I think you need to slow your way into it. Nathan, do you agree? Does it make sense?
Fantastic. So I would just add maybe 2 cents and a bit more color over here. Genway was built to augment the way we conduct research, not to replace the one-to-one interaction. To Hen's question, if your customer is primarily interested in complaining, it doesn't necessarily qualify as a user research session, right? It more qualifies as actually talking to someone from the CS team to help the customer with their specific issue. So when we talk about user research, Genway does not replace the need to conduct one-to-one sessions. It augments it by giving you an additional medium through which you can conduct maybe international studies, by which you can reach larger samples, and by which you can tap into audiences that weren't previously available. As in, maybe I'm in a different time zone, maybe I have some disabilities that prevent me from jumping on a one-to-one session, or maybe I'm just uncomfortable chatting to someone from the company. So you have to be very upfront about the experience and the fact that it is going to be an AI interview versus a human. I would go farther and recommend that when you promote something such as an AI moderated interview, you should give your customers an opportunity to also select to have a one-to-one session with the researcher, with the product manager, with the designer who is leading that. So hopefully that answers Hans' question. Let me take a few more questions. There is a question from, let me see. From Nicole, did you define the research strategy beforehand? Did you have a script ready, or are you just letting the AI build it for you?
So the strategy for the research, yes. So these are the main questions that I showed before, kind of this on kind of this screen. Giving it, what is a successful project, what I'm trying to get of it. So the strategy would definitely preset, but I did not have a script. And also, it's not that Genway writes the script for me and then I read it. No, it's a bit of a black box. So you give it a direction and then it runs. So at the moment, you're not exposed to the script of the session. But again, when when Genway launches the structured sessions very soon, if that's important for you, yes, you can go you will be able to go one by one in questions.
So maybe just to add a bit more color to Nicole's question, and I can see that also there are a few folks that were particularly curious about it, Chris and others. So when it comes to building a brief for an AI agent, it's different compared to a brief that you would build as a product manager, as a researcher, as a designer. When you create a brief within Genway, you need to address four primary questions. What is your project objective? What research questions are you looking to answer? Who are we going to interview? And what does a successful project look like? Based on those, the agent is going to adjust in real time, choosing the follow-up questions and choosing how to probe into each of the interviewees during the discussion. So it's a holistic interview experience, very similar to what you would do when you're interviewing someone. Now, there is another question that, Udy, I might take that. So that question, does AI able to understand subtext of the user or catch nuances such as emotional signals like iteration, anger, satisfaction, and so on? I will take this one. For the time being, that capability is not exposed to the end, to the customers and to the end users. It is coming up later this year. When it's out, the agent would be able to pick up on non-verbal cues, whether those are facial expressions based or whether it's tonation based.
Okay. Yeah, I suggest we move on so we're able to get to everything. Cool. So let's talk about execution, which is the super interesting area. Just a second. Yep. So I started with manual interviews that I coordinated, and then it probably took me like a week and a half to interview 10 days. And why is it a week and a half? Again, because it's human, we're human, it's time differences, it's delays, it's everything. And now, these are kind of the people that I met, and definitely on the positive side, as probably most of it's very open-minding and to meet the people. I can tell this guy here is a lawyer and this guy here is a pensioner, and he showed me his bookshelf on the right hand side to show all his cooking books, and this lady here at the bottom, she's the mom of a family of farmers, so the big carnivores. So we talked about that. So obviously that gives you a lot of exposure to what these people are like and what their preferences. And that's a great experience being kind of in a manual interview. On the other side, on the AI side, it's a completely different story. So I think I've finished setting up the project at one day at about 6 p.m. and I submitted it. And at about 10 p.m. at the same evening, like 4 hours later, I got a message from Genway saying, you should check the results because we already conducted 100 sessions. So that's really, really different. And the first, I think the most important thing is for you to feel what kind of things we're getting from that. So let me show you. So I'd like you to listen to a few examples. Here, in that sense, the AI actually gave its own example for something. Again, I was surprised it was nothing that I put in the setup before, but still it comes up in the discussion, and the AI kind of does the talk. So let's hear that.
Can you explain a little further on that contextual based on weather and et cetera?
Certainly, this feature would provide recommendations tailored to your current context. For example, if it's a cold day, it might suggest ingredients for a warm soup. Or, if it's a weekend morning, it might recommend items for a braai.
Again, and we're gonna do, let's look at another one. So again, here the AI interviewer kind of felt the unique issue behind this lady's diet, and he brought up the right question.
Say if I go on to my keto diet, which I've done in the past, that would be nice to be able to pull everything that would fall within keto.
That makes sense. When you were on the keto diet, did you find any challenges with your grocery shopping, and how did you manage them?
And the last example here, which is even more interesting, that during the discussion, the AI actually brought his own idea for a feature just to gain some feedback from the user.
Seems like the current solutions don't quite align with your needs due to the substitutions required. If there were a feature that allowed you to customize recipes with your specific dietary substitutions before adding them to your cart, would that change your perspective on its usefulness?
So I don't know about you. At that point, they should have picked up my jaw up from the floor. It was quite amazing to see that level of interview going on, and definitely seeing the results within 4 hours from since I submitted the project. And so if you'd like to get into the summary of the execution area, so one thing to be aware of is that the ability to improve. So again, as a manual interviewer, I can, if I feel that a question or two are not bringing good answers or anything like that, I can improve from session to session, or I can decide that I would like to stay consistent exactly between sessions. While Genway will not improve the level of discussion during, it will stay consistent, which is something that you need to be aware of. The other thing they should be aware of is the attention to details, and I'll give you an example. So when I listened to one of the sessions that the AI did, there was one interviewee that mentioned that maybe the supermarket can create a recipe out from what they already have in the cart, which was an interesting idea. But remember that the AI does a summary. So if I would just read the summary of all the interviews, I would not notice that thing. Because it is summarized. So you need to be aware that that's the difference between having 100 interviews summarized and just being in all the interviews and hearing all the examples. So one of the ways to go over that is just maybe listen, sample and listen to some of the sessions that you have, because not everything is coming up in the summary. The other aspect that we can differentiate between the manual and the AI is that the ability to dive in and validate. And again, I'll give you an example. In one of the sessions of the AI that I listened to, it's not the sessions that I conducted. There was a lady that told that her son needs a kind of a gluten-free diet, and then she kept on going, and the interview went on. And if it was my interview on a manual level, I would have said, wait, we just said only your son needs that type of diet, but the rest of the people don't. So how would you run your shopping with that dimension? So these are things that I would pick up immediately during the session. And you need to be aware that, not everything is in your control when you're letting the AI. So there's some level of difference in here. To be honest, the speed, and that's why it's kind of a bold in here, the speed difference just is overwhelming, because probably most of us are in R&D and development teams and product teams, and if at some point in the product development life cycle I need some user input, and the difference, like, okay, either takes 3 weeks of scheduling, interviewing, analysis, and something. So either gets 3 weeks to get your great answer, or maybe just spend 2 days, but you'll get a good enough answer. We know where most organizations will go. So I think really the fact that you can run tens or hundreds of people within a day makes a huge difference on the results. So if you ask me, I feel that an experienced human researcher is still a better interviewer. However, the speed of the results definitely kind of overcome this thing, and that's kind of looking at the execution area. That's kind of my take on it. Any questions on that?
So there were a few questions that folks were popping towards us kind of through the chat. Once again, I would encourage you to paste your questions in the Q&A section so that folks can see them, and Udy can also pick them kind of one by one. So maybe just kind of to mention a few questions that came up. I'm going to maybe just read out loud. One question from Joel that came through is around synthetic data and whether any synthetic data was used for the study that you conducted, Udy.
No, so no synthetic data. We only use data views. That's the short answer.
Okay, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about, so before you deployed the study, how did you test or validated the brief that you created?
So as I said, I created the interview, not the interview itself, kind of the guidelines that we saw before, and then I tested it on myself. I let myself be an interviewee, and as I mentioned, I felt that a few things were maybe slightly off balance. So I actually used the Genway GPT, and I said, where do I put all these kind of findings that I have? And it showed me like where to put it, and then I put the things that I wanted to improve into that section, and it just worked, to be honest.
Awesome. And out of curiosity, have you used the synthetic data feature within Genway that allows you to create a number of transcripts? So 3 transcripts to be precise based on the brief. So the synthetic data is basically the AI agent that you just created interviewing another generic AI agent and giving you an output of 3 transcripts that you can review. Have you had a chance to use that?
So to be honest, no.
Okay.
I did read some article, and I looked into the synthetic area, and my gut feeling, I can't prove it based on research or anything, is that pretty much everyone in the consumer area is doing research. And if you want to be just as everyone else, so maybe synthetic data or generic answers are good enough for you. But in that competitive level, if you want to be better than others, I think it's the real answers from real users that will make a difference and allow you to highlight things. So if I would run this project with a client now, I would definitely go for real users and not synthetic data. That's my own personal opinion. You do not have to follow that.
Yeah, so I would plus one that this is also our perspective. The only reason we do have the synthetic piece over there is to create an additional transparency layer between you and kind of the AI agent so that you get a general sense of the direction of the interview and you can review those transcripts. And the usability feedback is taken. The fact that you did not see the feature, it's something that we should be looking into. One last question before we move forward. So Sarjid shared a question did the AI report the ideas it came up with as its own ideas or as a participant idea, or did not report the ideas at all? So I think it goes back to the video that you just shared.
Yes, and it's a great way to move into the analytics section, which will answer your question, Sanjit. So let's talk about that, all the analytics area. What happens here is that we're familiar, most of us familiar with the manual way of doing things, which we need to kind of write down all the comments that people give, maybe create some kind of a findings log in which you log everything, and maybe collect some quotes that are interesting. And I would assume that for 10 people, it would probably be like a day or a day and a half easily to log all these issues. Obviously, with logging 100 answers, that's different. And again, within these few hours, when I looked into Genway, all the analytics are already there. So let's start have a look and what you're getting there. Again, we're not going to cover everything, but this is kind of what you're getting. And at the beginning, you start with a project summary. So these are overall findings of the project, and they are broken down to themes or areas like shopping preferences, dietary consideration. So the findings on the interview levels are broken. You can go even beyond that, and they will show you top insights. Again, multi-store price comparison, uploading ingredients, all these kind of things. And on which each of these insights, you will get direct links to watch or listen to all the 63 interviews that mention that specific thing. So you definitely have access. And all that is in the interview, sorry, in the research level, and you can go one level down to the interview level, which is I have a list of interviews. I can select a specific interview. I can read the summary of that specific interview, and even I go one level deep on this kind of rabbit hole. I can listen to the entire interview, but essentially each of the answers is broken down, so I can read each answer, and each one of them can be tagged, and is also already an audio bit that you can pull directly into your the presentation that you're doing to the management or anything else. So the days of cutting all these videos are over now. So that's a very clear way of doing it. The other interesting thing that was not available when I did the research, but Nathan was kind enough to scan it for me now, is Ask Alex. So what happens is, imagine you have all these interviews, and then there's kind of a body of knowledge is created, right? There's like all the answer that everyone had, but suddenly you might be reminded of a question that you did not ask, or maybe you ask some of maybe you ask some of the people and some of the people are not asked. So you're actually able to ask question all this kind of knowledge base. So that's called Ask Alex. And when you go into this box, it already suggests different questions based on the knowledge that is available within this kind of body of knowledge. And for me, I try to imagine things from real life. So sometimes the PM comes to say, well, did anyone bring any new idea or any kind of these questions? So you can go and ask, can you list all the new ideas or features that came from participants? So here I get the answers. Obviously, if I needed to do this analysis manually, I needed to go through one by one all the sessions. Here, it's just a click of a button, you get this answer. On the other hand, again, if someone asks you, did anyone mention any bad experience? So yeah, can you list any bad experience that people mentioned with regard to the online grocery shopping, even though that was not part of the project? And again, some people mention these things. I get the answer, and I get the reference that I can go directly to that interview and go on. So for me, really, the research is pretty amazing what you're getting pretty much automatically when the interviews are done. So if I want to compare these things, the number of facets that I can approach. Again, I plan something, I have specific questions. as a manual interviewer, that's one thing. From Genway, I can use Ask Alex and ask questions of a different way and see different perspective that came up during interviews. Um, in terms of finding gems, again, someone bringing up a good idea or something like that. Again, when I'm interviewing, I can trust myself to notice all these things on the system. These things are summarized, so you may miss some stuff unless you go on and listen to or at least sample some of the interviews. Quotes editing, huge manual labor. If anyone tried that, that's just a lot of work. Here, automated and pre-cut, which is pretty amazing. Speed, again, analytics will take me a few days. Here, it's immediate for everything. And one more things to mention in terms of the validity. So when you speak to 10, 12 people, you can definitely listen to the qualitative level, but you can't say anything meaningful in terms of half of the people did this or that. On 10, 12 people, it's meaningless. Now, if you're using 100 people of 200 people, it depends, statistic based on what's your sample size. But definitely you can, if you see 60 people doing something or just 5 people doing something else, you have a bit more confident to say, hey, this is like a huge trend, a lot of people are doing it, or this is something very negligible. So even if you don't have total statistic validity, it's still more meaningful than talking to 12, 10 or 12 people. So the bottom line of the analytics, I feel that AI delivered very quality work, solid accuracy. But the tip I would do is just make sure you listen, you sample at least some of the sessions, and at least read the summaries or listen to some of the people. Um, any questions before we go on to the kind of overall summary?
Yeah, Udy. So there are a whole bunch of questions. I will try to read them out and then we can choose kind of, maybe I can answer some of them and you can pick on the others. So a few more questions for Saravjit. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. I
Avjit,
apologize if
yes.
I'm not. In the interviews with Genway, can you ask for the user to complete a rating question? If so, will the analytics provide data on the rating? The answer is yes. You can integrate multiple choice questions. You can integrate rating questions. You can integrate card sorting exercises, first click exercises, etc. Another question regarding Alex. With Ask Alex, could this be done over a series of projects? And the answer over here, yes, that capability is available on one project as well as multiple projects combined. You can query the data and get a consistent and transparent answer time over time rather than kind of, hallucinations as we all know them from ChatGPT and other solutions. So the answer is yes, you can query and use the Ask Alex feature across different projects. Bruno is asking a question regarding the support of Portuguese. If I'm not mistaken, yes, if it is not yet in the system, it's going to be there over the next couple of weeks. When we deploy a new language support, it goes through a basically comprehensive Q&A process to ensure that the quality of the transcript and the quality of the agent meets a certain threshold. More questions from Bella. Are the interviewees real people or AI simulated? How do you get access to professional users when it comes to a B2B products? Are the interviews real people? Bella, to your question, yes, all the interviews that are conducted by Genway are conducted with real people. When it comes to B2B participants, by the end of Q3, so by the end of September, Genway is going to integrate one of the largest panels in the market, 200 million people globally, and that is going to address B2B as well as B2C recruitment.
Nathan, maybe we have another 7 minutes, so maybe I'll push forward and then we leave a couple of questions at the end.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
Cool. So we're actually getting to the summary of this thing, and I want to share with you kind of my main takeaway as a researcher. So obviously, you saw the speed of recruitment, we saw the execution, we saw the summaries, fast analytics. So I almost cannot see a way that this is not going to become part of my daily toolkit. Um, on the other hand, and that's kind of Genway's approach as well. Um, this is still requires a researcher's mind and work. So if someone has in mind, hey, let's just get a project manager, someone to run this for us, it is not built for that. It is built for a researcher that can plan for the recruitment, that can ask the question, that can feel if the sessions are running smoothly and all that. So it's still definitely to be run by a researcher, that is someone that understands research. At the same time, if you possess this knowledge, this knowledge, this is a very effective power multiplier for you as a researcher. And one of the examples is that I have a client now that they have uh, customers all around the world with different segments. And traditionally, because they have mainly one researcher in the company, they only approach maybe a single segments. So this quarter, we're only going to speak to US citizens. Next quarter, maybe we'll approach UK citizens. Imagine that now they can set up the interview once and just send it all around the world, and within days have answers from all around. So it's a very effective power multiplier. Um, and if I want to take it to a bit of the professional, personal level, so I was in, you saw in the position of being kind of scared from the whole thing, and what's going to happen. And I saw that if I don't want to be that dude that being scared, I need to get into that and get my hands dirty. And my role at the moment is actually a role of a puppeteer, so I can actually learn how to orchestrate more than one researcher, and really make an impact by doing multiple researches that I wasn't able to do so far. So if you want my personal advice, and that's not specifically related to Genway, it just start trying things, get help if others that tried it before you. If you want to be critical of the results that you're getting, make sure that they are up to your standards as a researcher, and just keep moving with these things. And thank you very much for Genway to give me the opportunity to run this research. And I'm open up for the rest of the questions if you have.
Awesome. Sorry, I just realized that I was typing and I wasn't on mute. So thank you, Udy. There are a few more questions over here, but maybe before we do the questions, I would mention one thing maybe, and this is where we disagree, I would say. So from your perspective, this kind of goes back to the democratization of research discussion, right? And whether it necessarily has to be a researcher or a function in the organization that does research, and what happens if we are a 5 people strong company and we do not have a researcher. Someone has to do that, right? And so I don't want to go too deep on that discussion, and I would leave it with kind of your feedback and with your perception of that. I definitely hope that in the future research would be more accessible to everyone, especially to functions that Google defines as insights generating functions, whether it's design and product and not only research. Awesome. So let me take a few more questions over here. There are some questions from Joel. Joel, would you like to unmute yourself and maybe ask some of those questions rather than me reading them out loud?
Oh golly. That's where would you like me to, what haven't you hit yet?
I was going to reference kind of the Figma one, and I'm happy to answer those individually as well, but feel free to choose what question you think would kind of bring the most value to everyone else that are still with us.
Okay, so one of the things that I've run into in talking to AIs, right? NLUs, as it were, is that they stick to script almost in an orthodox way. And you mentioned that that your particular platform has the ability to prompt questions that are not necessarily in the script. My question is, one, how effective are those questions? Two, are they just context related questions, or are they based on the user's insights? Three, one of the problems that I run into in speaking to AI robots is that not only are they orthodox with the script, but they also do not let humans opt out of interacting with the chatbot. And for those of us who have accessibility issues around speech, like stutters, where English might be our second language, who pause for a prolonged period of time in between speaking. One of the things I'm curious about is how fast does the AI pick up the conversation, or do they allow for pregnant pauses? One of the biggest issues that I have around speaking to AIs as a user or a candidate is that it seems to be profoundly apt to interrupt anytime there is a period of silence. It does not allow for a user to think and then speak. And so, long question, but those are the ones where I feel like I gravitate most towards.
Awesome. So let me try to pick up on some of those. So to your last question, kind of everything related to a potential so everything related to, say, speech. Within Genway, the speech pickup process happens within the first 10 seconds. There is a technical name to it that I currently forget, but we're using a speech-to-speech basically process, which allows a two-way conversation. You can basically tell the AI agent that you need a few minutes to think about it, take your time to think about it, and then answer. It can basically work with prolonged pauses and allow you time for thinking. So that's kind of one thing to mention. The second thing, to your point around opting out. So as an interviewee, when you're faced with the kind of request to join an interview, Genway is very transparent in its interface about the fact that it's going to be an AI moderated interview. And so as a user, you know what are you signing up for. At any point, you can close the window and kind of terminate the interview. In some geos and some industries, by law, you're also required to have an icon and an ability to get the interviewee to jump on a conversation with the CS team. So I hope that that kind of answers your second part of the question, and we can definitely talk more about it. And I forgot the first part, but it was extremely important. If you can just remind it to me.
Oh, golly gee, I don't remember it. I don't have it scripted.
Sorry, it was around the script. It was around the fact, here we go, scripted. So
Yeah,
the
the orthodox
technology that
script.
Genway developed is completely different compared to everything else in the market. When we're talking about AI moderated interviews, those are actually interviews rather than a list of 20 static questions that are being asked by voice with static follow-ups. It's an actual conversation based on the brief, and the agent adapts based on what you're saying in real time. If we are conducting an interview about your eating habits, and you say that you're actually vegan, the AI agent will understand that it needs to double down on your vegan kind of diet rather than just the general diet.
But I don't, so, okay. So if it does a screener, then I should already know that the person that I'm about to talk to is vegan, because I would have screened for it, because I'm a human researcher and that's what I would normally do. A lot of the questions that you've asked of your AI are largely market research questions. Tell me about your experience with online shopping. That generally is not a question that I would ask as a user researcher. What I would ask is something along the lines of, how functional or useful do you find the shopping experience when interacting with our product? Right?
That might be
That's a user research question.
So
Like, I don't,
that's a question to Udy rather than to me, and he can comment about that. So
also
Yeah.
in one of the questions you
I
have.
think in terms of time, we'll be
All right.
Can have
Alright.
so maybe could we continue this conversation offline?
Udy, can you actually maybe try to answer Joel's question? So let's try to, and those of you that need to drop, please feel free to drop. Thank you very much for joining the session. And if you would like to connect with me or Udy after the session, feel free to reach out by email or by LinkedIn. A few folks were sharing their LinkedIn on the chat, so feel free to connect as well. But let's try to, for maybe a few more minutes, if you have, Udy, let's try to unpack Joel's question, because I think that that's kind of the burning one for him.
Yeah. So when you start the project with Genway, you can select if you want to do like usability testing or more like conduct an open interview. And for this research, I did an interview, in which case you're right. Some of these questions may sound like a market research, but as I said, it was important for me to gain their perspective on features, but only based on, when I get the context of who they are and I can, validate if it's actually meaningful. But I agree that different ways of doing it. And if you're doing usability testing or something more functional, you can use your Figma prototype and let them play with it and then ask the questions. So it's just a different nature. And this is what I did in this research.
And Joel, maybe just one more point over here. I think that I would be extremely excited to have you use Genway, take it for a test drive, conduct a few studies, recruit a few participants, and maybe we can have you for our next webinar present your own results and your own study. We're always looking for feedback. There are always things that can and should be done better. But the main thing to keep in mind is that AI today is as bad as it would ever be. And the next 5 to 10 years, it's about deploying it in a transparent and trustworthy way. So we have the responsibility to provide that feedback and to push for things to be done in the right way.
Totally get it. You mentioned integration with Figma. How does that work?
So when you go into the system, if you need to connect to a Figma prototype, so you can do that through the integration. Some of the tools that you mentioned are coming up later this queue. Others simply don't have an API in order to enable an integration with them. But that's in our help center. So once you sign up, you can get access to the help center, and over there you can look into that.
Okay.
Fantastic. Folks, thank you very much. And Udy, thank you very much for holding this webinar and for sharing with us your experience. And once again, for those of you that want to connect after the webinar, feel free to reach out to Udy or myself. And if you would like to take Genway for a test ride, always happy to accommodate that. Yeah, and beyond that, have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.